It feels good to be on vacation. Good thing there aren't any new sets coming out soon, so I won't miss any card previews. So it turns out that Wizards decided to drop some spicy announcements literally the day I left, so I apologize for being a little late to the party on this one. Today we're going to take a look at 4 of the more interesting spoilers from Modern Horizons 2 and the Forgotten Realms D&D set, and see if we can find some spicy things to do with them. We have more spoilers coming out all the time, so make sure to hit subscribe if you don't want to miss the rest of them. First off, we have Urzas Saga. This card is really powerful and pretty straightforward. You play it, make some mana, maybe make a construct, and then you get to tutor for any artifact that costs 0 or 1. One thing to note here is that you can only get cards with a mana cost of 0 or 1, not CMC. So you can get a Soul Ring or a Mana Crypt, but you can't tutor out an artifact land since its mana cost is nothing, not 0. Now if we're being honest, getting a Soul Ring with this card is going to be the right option 99% of the time. But using some obscure Saga rules, we can actually tutor for a ton of artifacts with this land instead of just 1. The commander we're going to use for this is Silas Wren, probably paired with Akiri Lineslinger. They tend to be pretty good in egg-style artifact decks where you have a bunch of 0 or 1 mana artifacts that basically just draw a card. To pull off this combo, we're going to need to start with a Strionic Resonator on the board. Luckily, running Strionic Resonator in this deck already kind of makes sense because Silas Wren has a triggered ability. Now this is where things get a bit confusing because we need to learn some technical Saga rules.
This is big brain time.
Sagas tick up by 1 lore counter every turn, and when they get to the last chapter ability, they get sacrificed as a state-based action. But it's actually a little more complicated than that. If we look at the official rules for sagas, it says that if the number of lore counters on a saga permanent is greater than or equal to its final chapter number, and it isn't the source of a chapter ability that has triggered but not yet left the stack, that saga's controller sacrifices it. So in other words, if we tick up to our last lore counter, we don't sacrifice our saga until the final chapter ability actually leaves the stack. This is where the Resonator comes in. When our Urzas Saga ticks up to 3, we use the Resonator to copy that triggered ability. When the copied ability resolves, we tutor out a card named Hex Parasite. Now while the original tutor ability is still on the stack, we use the Hex Parasite's ability to remove one of the lore counters from Urzas Saga. Now we let the original tutor resolve, and we can tutor out a Soul Ring or whatever else we feel like getting. So not only did we tutor out 2 artifacts, but we still have the Urzas Saga on the board, so we can get even more artifacts next turn. We never had to sacrifice it because it never had 3 lore counters while its ability wasn't on the stack. This is the best way I could find to really abuse Urzas Saga for some maximum value. Next up, we have 2 spicy callbacks to some very iconic cards. Brainstorm is basically a functional reprint of Brainstorm, but it's colorless, so it's strictly better. Diamond Lion is like a Lion's Eye Diamond that's actually good because it impacts the board and slots straight into cat tribal decks.
You know, it's amazing. You are 100% wrong. I mean, nothing you've said has been right.
Okay, yeah, these cards are much worse than the originals. But that doesn't mean we can't find them a home. Brainstorm is a really bad Brainstorm that's colorless, so all we need to do is find a commander that isn't blue, but that really wants to play Brainstorm, and I have the perfect solution. The Victus Asmati, the not terrible one, is the perfect deck for top deck manipulation, and we would 100% be running Brainstorm in this deck if we could. He lets us destroy one of everybody's permanents, and then everyone gets to flip the top card of their deck onto the battlefield. In this deck, Brainstorm is arguably a little bit better because it's a permanent, so we can actually hit it off the top of our deck with Vivictus. Diamond Lion was a bit tougher to find a home for. The fact that it's a 2/2 creature isn't going to make up for the fact that it costs 2 mana, so it will almost always be worse than the original LED in just about any deck. So in order to run this card, we need to find a commander that wants to run LED so badly that we can justifiably put in a much worse version also. After searching through some commanders, I found 3 possibilities. Damia Sage of Stone and Jin Gataxias will both refill your hand after you play them, so discarding your hand to Diamond Lion to get them out 3 turns faster is a pretty good plan. These are kinda risky though, because if someone kills your commander, you might come back empty-handed. I think a better option would be Tybalt Cosmic Imposter, also known as Valky's Butt. Being a Planeswalker makes him a little harder to remove, and you can activate his +2 right away to ensure that you have at least 4 cards you can play. So even though these cards aren't anything special compared with their predecessors, they still have a home in our format. Finally, we have the big daddy combo you've all been waiting for. Tiamat lets us tutor for 5 dragons when she enters the battlefield. Keep in mind that she's worded like Zakama, so it's not just an ETB trigger. We have to cast Tiamat in order to get the ability to happen. This is definitely a chonky Dragon Timmy card at first glance, but I found a way to combo off with Tiamat using just one other card and 4 mana. Our combo-tastic partner in crime today is none other than Dream Halls. Dream Halls essentially makes every card into Force of Will. Instead of paying the mana cost, we can just discard a card that shares a color instead. So we play Dream Halls, and then we start by just discarding any card that has a color to cast Tiamat. When she ETBs, we tutor for 5 dragons. Some of the dragons don't really matter because we'll just be discarding them to play our other dragons, so we'll represent those dragons with the Tubby Dragon himself. Now we get to tutor for 5 dragons, so we get Immersturm Predator, Rapacious Dragon, Changeling Berserker, and 2 Tubsters. We discard 1 Tubman to play Immersturm, which lets us sacrifice other creatures. And we discard another Tubbo to play Rapacious Dragon. Rapacious Dragon will give us 2 treasures when it ETBs. Now we can sacrifice Tiamat to Immersturm and replay her from the command zone by discarding Changeling Berserker. We will need to use the 2 treasures here because we still have to pay commander tax even though we're using Dream Halls. Now we can tutor for 5 more dragons. So we get Bladewing the Risen, Terror of the Peaks, and 3 Tub Nations. We discard 1 Tub to play Terror of the Peaks, which deals damage whenever a creature ETBs. Finally, we discard another Tubbalicious to play Bladewing, which resurrects a dragon when it ETBs. We use the Bladewing to resurrect our Changeling, which will do damage because of Terror of the Peaks. When the Changeling enters, we can have it champion the Bladewing. Then we sacrifice the Changeling to Immersturm, which will bring back the Bladewing and deal more damage with Terror of the Peaks. The Bladewing brings back the Changeling again, and we just keep looping for infinite damage, and we even have 1 Tubmageddon, the final Tubbening, left over for good measure. I know that was a lot of steps, so here's a quick replay of what all just went down.
You just got up smash. And now, Happy Feet, Wombo Combo. That ain't Falco. That ain't Falco.
This combo seems really strong, to the point that it might be a little too spiky for some metas, but it's not as oppressive as it looks because it has a significant downside. Remember that Dream Halls makes everyone's cards free as long as they discard another card. So even if everyone else is tapped out, there's a very high chance that someone can stop you. Even if your meta isn't spiky enough for Force of Wills, your opponents can just discard any blue card to play a free counterspell. And if the Dream Halls is still on the board after your turn, then you might end up losing because of it when your opponents get full advantage of its effect. So yeah, this is a very high reward combo, but I think it's high risk enough that you probably don't have to feel too bad about running it in most playgroups. That's it for now. I'll be covering some of the more interesting spoilers as they come out over the coming weeks. So you know what time it is. It is time for the patent pending Commander Tofu MTG Trivia Corner. Our question last week was, which of the following has never appeared on the type line of a magic creature card? A. Deserter, B. Ferret, C. Merfolk Goblin, D. Lizard Wizard, or E. None, as in a typeless creature. And the answer for a whopping 1 Tofu point is A. Deserter. This one's a little tricky because Deserter is a real creature type, but it's never been printed on a creature. Kjeldorn Homeguard makes 0/1 Deserter tokens, and that is the one time this creature type has ever appeared on a card, but it wasn't on the type line. Funnily enough, there was another creature printed years later named Afflicted Deserter, and it's not even a Deserter, so it seems like Wizards really isn't planning on making Deserter Tribal a thing. Alrighty, now for the other examples, which are worth 5 tofu points each if you guess these. For ferret, we have the aptly named Joven's Ferrets. It's just a bunch of ferrets. For Merfolk Goblin, we have Razorfin Hunter. This card is creepy and should not exist. For Lizard Wizard, we have Frilled Mystic, and yeah, it's an elf too, but it still counts. And for the no type, we have Nameless Race. This guy is just one of many creatures affected by the Grand Creature Type update of 07, where they got rid of a bunch of weird creature types. Since this card is called Nameless Race, I think they thought it would be funny to just leave it typeless to match. Congratulations on all of you who got some tofu points, and if you missed out this time, then don't worry, we've got another creature type trivia question for you. What is the highest number of creature types that any creature has, not counting creatures with Changeling? We already know that some have 3, like Frilled Mystic is an Elf Lizard Wizard, but is there a creature with 4? 5? Maybe even 6? If you want to find out, then hit subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Thanks for watching.